This is Shawn and Shauna, and welcome to the Web Piano Teacher Artist Series podcast, where we as fans explore the music of the world's most popular musicians and attempt to find out what it is that makes their music so good.
With each episode, we put ourselves in the artist's shoes, then write, compose, and perform an original song, applying what we learned and, hopefully, attempt to capture the magic and spirit of their music. After each episode, we hope to spark interest in an artist's music that inspires you to hear and appreciate their songs in a whole new way.
All right, here we are again.
Welcome back to episode 3 of the Web Piano Teacher Artist Series. Today we're going to talk about Carole King.
Carole King, one of my favorites.
One of my favorites too. We had a debate about, not really a debate, but who was our favorite, Joni Mitchell or Carole King? And we landed on they really can't be compared.
No.
Because
I'll still have my favorite, but yeah.
You know what? And then I was going to say earlier too that this was definitely one of my favorite female singer-songwriter albums, Tapestry. We're mostly focusing on the Tapestry album today. I'm just going to take away the female part. I'm going to say this is maybe one of my favorite overall albums of all time.
Yeah. And she's one of my favorite piano players. I love the way she plays when she sings, you know.
Well, because she's awesome.
Yeah, she is.
So I want to give just a quick little overview of Carole King's early life, because I think it's important to her story. And
then we're going to do our song.
Yeah, and then we're going to do our song, so stick with us. She was born in 1942, so we're talking post-World War II, baby boomers, her parents. She was born in Manhattan, New York, grew up in Brooklyn. And this is important because at this time, this is American music capital city.
Okay.
Happening in New York. All the doo-wop groups, the crooners, everything's coming out of New York from this time until the time Carole jumpstarts her career.
Okay.
I think a lot of times we think of L.A. being the place.
Or Nashville, yeah.
Or Nashville. Well, Nashville always was for country music, but right now so much was happening in New York. Carole was early on, her parents noticed she was very gifted and had an interest in music. Her mom was a musician. She went to college for theater and musical theater. Was always playing Broadway original cast soundtracks.
So real cultured upbringing.
Yeah. And music was just an identifier of their family, right? It was always going. Her mom was playing piano.
Yeah. And I love the positive upbringing with the music. A lot of times you hear musicians, had a rough childhood and they turn to music kind of as a refuge. But she had supportive parents, right? And was cultured, and it was just part of her life. Yeah. And they noticed she could start, she was starting to name the notes on the piano. So they'd play a note. She would say the name of the note, and her dad was like, she has perfect pitch. And it was like which I don't know if resent is the right word, but she didn't love this, that he kind of put it on display every time family or friends were over. Look what Carole can do. Look what Carole can do. Play a note. And she'd have to perform. Yeah.
And she describes in her book, I read her memoir, Natural Woman, and she describes it wasn't perfect pitch. It was relative pitch. She was really good at relative pitch. She may not get the first note right, but once she knew the first note, she could name all the other notes.
Yeah.
Which is a gift.
Oh, certainly.
So I don't want to say it's less than or that perfect pitch is better than. It's not. I think it's a gift I would love to have. But she just was really gifted in that area. And she always was tinkering at the piano. They would set up the Manhattan phone books on a stool so she could sit there and reach. And she just was making up songs and
kids
playing
today don't
songs.
know what a phone book is. So.
I know. Well, most of our podcast listeners probably do.
Yeah.
And so she was always tinkering on the piano. Her parents allowed it to happen. I'm in a household where kids are constantly playing instruments, and it does get old. But they let her do it, and I'm glad they did.
Yeah, yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
All our kids playing guitar, ukulele, piano,
all the time.
singing.
All the time. But she went to a performing arts high school. So even in just her regular high school career, she was surrounded by music. She was getting to compose music. The teachers were like, Carole, you do this, you know. And she had a little doo-wop group she put together, and she was a very good student. She skipped 2 grades, or she started school early and then skipped a grade. So she they were the cosines. That's like a little math.
Tangent, cosine.
Yeah.
I don't know what it means. I just remember tangent and cosine.
I remember I didn't know what it meant. Still don't. But anyway, and she was a girl that just had tenacity and confidence. And at an early age, right out of high school, so for her 16, went to, one of the record labels headquarters in Manhattan, shook the train, and she was like, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to find somebody and I'm going to play my song. And they bought it.
Guts.
She just was like, I can do this. She knew she felt like she was good at it, and she just went and did it. She met Jerry Goffin.
Yeah.
And then there we have the Goffin and King writing partnership, which, just to put a little reference on how prolific these two were, first off, Paul McCartney and John Lennon, so we all know McCartney and Lennon, they wanted to be Goffin and King.
Wow.
All right. And they wrote songs. I mean, here you probably know, Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? I mean, obviously that's on Tapestry, but it was written for the Shirelles. Yeah. Locomotion, Everybody Doing, Up on the Roof, Take Good Care of My Baby, Take Good Care of My Baby, Some Kind of Wonderful for the Drifters.
Oh, yeah.
And Chains, which was for a girl group, but the Beatles did it. So this is like a teeny tiny amount of songs.
Yeah.
They were so prolific.
And it seems like a theme of these artists that we're doing. They started out writing songs for other people, just, trying to write songs that would become a hit. And seems like that's a good way to start.
Yeah. So for those that don't know what we do on this podcast, we take an artist, we pick an artist. I'll read about them and research about their early life in regards to music and their influences and their songwriting style or their method or just anything about their musical career. And then I will write lyrics and I will hand it off to Shawn, who, why don't you explain kind of what your process is?
Well, I'll take the lyrics and then I will have listened to the artist quite a bit. I listen to Tapestry over and over. I kind of already knew it. Yeah. But just listening to it, get in the Carole King frame of mind, so I just listen, just so I can get a feel for her style and the things that she does and write a song in that style, whatever comes out, so that's what I do. I take those lyrics and I write a song, and then actually this time we collaborated more than we usually do. I usually, finish it out and then we'll do it. But I kind of, put some music to it, and then you did some more writing after that, after you had a melody.
Yeah,
and then,
I had to change a melody.
Because you're singing it.
Yeah.
Because it's not me this time.
Or not a melody. I had to change a verse because once the music was there, the verse that I wrote just did not fit the attitude of the song. So it just needed to be changed.
Yeah. And since you're singing it anyway, it helps to fashion the melody in a way that's going to work for your voice.
All right, let's quit teasing the people.
All right.
Let's do the song.
Okay.
Oh boy.
What's the name of the song?
She Goes Before.
Okay. You ready?
na na na. She says we have a story to sing. Sometimes it's buried deep inside. So come on, shout, get loud, let's hear it. Let it become our victory song. A child with child, making trips around the sun, weaving notes round rhythms, chords broken but not undone. No matter how dark the night becomes, well, the music of the ivories makes life sound alright. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. She goes before, she goes before. She can laugh, she can smile at the days to come. She goes before, she goes before. I can hear a melody for the future to hum. She goes before, she goes before. She can laugh, she can smile at the days to come. She goes before, she goes before. I can hear a melody for the future to hum. Oh. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Yeah.
All right.
It's a song, it's hard to sit down and sing.
Yeah. Sort of get up and dance.
I have this
and
like
groove.
really bouncy seat on this chair, so
I heard the chords a little bit different in the middle than I usually do. Did you tell that?
I just try to concentrate on what I'm doing. Like this song, I like everything about it, how we did it, but there is no room to like not know where. You don't have time to think about where you're going next, or you don't have time to. You got to
It's
get those
moving.
words out.
And we just wrote this.
We did, guys.
Yeah.
We are
Uh-huh. Brand new
last
song.
minute
Yeah.
type of people.
Mhm. Sometimes though, it really makes you, when it's fresh, is when you get the most inspiration when you're performing it. I think. Sometimes.
I do. So she worked with Jerry Goffin, and they got hired as staff writers for Alden Music, and the environment that they worked in, it was like they got put in a cubicle. And there's all these writing teams. They're all on one floor, and they got basically enough room. She said for like a table to put your ashtray on, a little upright piano, and a tiny little desk.
Okay.
And they were pitted against each other competitively. Who can bring the next song?
Wow.
And they're only
That would
getting
be-
paid by the song.
That would be hard though. That'd be hard to be creative and to be good at it under that kind of pressure.
Maybe. I kind of wonder what it would be like,
Yeah.
because
Under the gun with a time limit and you're competing.
we're the type of people that when we have a ton of time, we don't even do the work till the last minute. And it works out all right, I guess. But anyway,
Must have worked. They wrote good songs.
they did.
Mhm.
All right.
So-
What do we want to do next?
All right. Well, we're going to talk about our song and how it relates to Carole King's Tapestry album.
Yeah.
Kind of some of the things that she would do that make her sound like Carole King, and how we kind of incorporated that in our song. So the first thing I thought that stuck out to me was the rhythmic complexity that she has in some of her songs.
She is certainly a rhythmic pianist.
Yeah, there is. It's like I always say, playing the drums on the piano is what it's like. So you start out with "I Feel the Earth Move."
What a way to open an album up, right?
You just can't listen to that and sit still. You have
I know,
to
but-
do this. She's the bass, she's the drums, and the middle instruments and everything on the piano. So I feel a strong rhythmic ideas always go through, permeate her song. And So I wanted to have that with Hour, so I just started out, and if it reminds you of that song, a little bit, maybe. So I wanted to have something that was rhythmic. So you don't use any pedal hardly at all, and you just play the drums on the piano. So that's kind of what I started with when we were writing the song. And she has, so you have Feel the Earth Move, has that also, this song right here. Go ahead and sing. The song, but so everyone has heard that, but
you know what that makes me think of though? I couldn't think of the lyric because
it's different.
Separate. It goes, "Take a chance on me."
Oh,
it's
from the Office. Okay,
we just watched that episode. So
yeah,
it's probably why I was like, I can't think of the words. All I want to think is, "Take a chance on me." When
Andy sings to Angela.
Singing to Angela.
Yeah.
So messed up.
Right. So a lot of rhythmic coolness in that song. Also, It's Too Late. That would be a good intro if she didn't, if I wasn't ripping it off of her. Just
we were going for the nearly rip off, not the total rip off.
Yeah, well, our intro is good, but this is good too. If I was Carole King and I were doing a podcast, I would use that to intro with. Anyway.
Well, we'll let her know. I'll let her know.
Yeah. She cares what our opinion is, or my opinion. So you hear the rhythmic complexity in that. It's not just... And that's just two chords. So it's not the chords you play, it's what you do with the chords. And with just two chords, she did a lot right there. You really set the attitude of that song. And that's what rhythm does. The texture, the style, and that you play it. Are you using pedal? Are you not using pedal? Are you letting the left hand, be a part of the rhythm? Those little licks, that she does, that really sets the attitude of the song, I think.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
So the first verse of the song I wrote, the lyrics, I didn't really have anything in mind for the melody when I'm writing. I've tried. You keep telling me to try.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. So she goes before a beat ahead in time, in the wilderness of concrete streets with the city sounds a rhyme, calling out a destiny in 4-part harmony. That's about a young Carole King walking through, taking the train, walking to New York City.
With this attitude.
But I really had no idea you would give me a song with that.
And I didn't know what that was related to. I just...
But when you read that, did you think this is a song that needs attitude? This girl's walking down the street, or like?
No, it just kind of comes.
Interesting.
Yeah, it just kind of comes, but that does fit it, doesn't it? She's taking off.
Yeah.
It really.
And that's why I had to rewrite the second verse, because the second verse I kind of had about like this field of flowers and a seed and like something getting scattered by the wind, and I was like, that doesn't not fit the attitude of this song.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the way the collaboration has gone, and that may be what people do when they collaborate. They don't necessarily sit down together.
This is only our third collaboration.
They may, kick it around. You say, well, I'm stuck here. I'm in a roadblock. So they give it to someone else, and they make a breakthrough, and they give it back, and they, and then maybe you get together finally. But I think some of the collaboration is probably just handing what you have over to someone else and seeing what they think, what comes to their mind. But anyway, this rhythmic stuff, a lot of her best songs have that rhythmic drive in it. Just really cool. So that's what I wanted to have, at least on our first, part.
It totally fits.
Right. So that, Feel the Earth Move, that kind of is where that sprang from.
And I would say I Feel the Earth Move, when she opens up that album and she's just banging the piano keys, which I love. Just such confidence. Like that was just who she was. And so that was how she played the piano. And it's kind of cool. I mean, that was kind of my inspiration for that first chorus or the first verse. And that just came through. I didn't really have an expectation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Good. Yeah.
Okay. So let's take a little break.
Okay.
And we'll be back to keep talking about Carole King.
All right.
Okay, we're back. And we have talked about Carole King being a rhythmic player, that's a characteristic of her music that you would find especially in this Tapestry album, but probably all throughout.
Right. And I like, she's one of my favorites because she's a real piano player. She's not just someone who uses the piano to write her songs and then chords along while the rest of the band does most of the stuff. She, is front and center on the piano, and she can do piano-driven song and sing, and she can also let the other band members to kind of take control, and she can go to the background. But she's a true musician, not just a songwriter, not just a singer, but she's a true pianist.
And I have to give props to the producer of this album, which, gosh, it just left my mind what his name was. But he didn't cover her up as a pianist. He didn't get too many instruments in the room. I mean, for the most part, I hear bass, I hear drums, and like an electric keyboardist.
Yeah.
At times. Right. But this album was so well edited. And I've listened to enough of her other stuff. I know you pretty much just listened to Tapestry, but this album it just was like that perfectly seasoned mashed potatoes. I mean, like, it's just perfect the way everything came together. And on I Feel the Earth Move, she has this, if you've ever seen a live recording, and we watched one on YouTube, at the end, she does this like earthquake interpretation on the keys, where she's like going down the keyboard. And she did that, and the producer took it out for the recording. And she was kind of like, ugh. She loved it. As an artist interpreting something, I can see why. And she, to this day, still plays it live every time.
Okay.
But she did admit for the album that was a good choice that the producer made. She understands for like listening over and over. So putting her piano forefront and not covering it up with other instruments and letting Carole be Carole completely, what I thought was so smart.
Yeah.
I just want to give him props because that was good. I'm going to find his name. Lou Adler, I'm pretty sure. Or Alden.
Okay.
Yikes. Go on, Shawn.
All right. So, moving on from the rhythmic aspect, is a term that I don't know if I invented this term or not, but I'm just going to call it stacked chords. And what I mean by that, you can play just a simple 3-note chord. Probably everyone's done that on the piano. You just play 3 notes. Well, a lot of songs are written with just 3 notes per chord, but you can have what you call 7th chords or 9th chords or 11th or 13th chords. That's where you keep adding notes to the chord, and making a chord more complex. But instead of calling it 9, 13, and all that stuff, I like to call it a stacked chord because to me, to my ear, and to a lot of people, it's like combining 2 chords. Instead of calling this D major 7, it may be easier to think of the chord as D on the bass and F sharp minor on top. The 3 notes, that we talked about, the triad, and then the D in the bass. That may be easier than thinking of D major 7. When you play, this chord, it may be easier to think of a 3-note chord, A, C sharp, E, over a D bass. So it's a combination of an A chord and a D chord together. So in my mind, when I hear it, that's what I hear. I don't hear, D major 7 or 8, whatever. So she specialized in that. mixing these chords together. And let's use "I Feel the Earth" as the next example. So we have this first part, but when she gets the, I want to sing it. Ooh, baby, when I see your face, never as a mother may. Oh, darling. Okay, there we go. Good. So we have, hear the lusciousness of the stacked chords. Okay, that last one is called a 4/5, which is a very good lead to go back to the one chord. But it's a mixture. The first one is an E flat bass over a G minor. The next one is an A flat bass over a C minor. So it's mixing chords. And she did that a whole lot, not just once in a while. In fact, the whole chorus there is just filled with those stacked chords, I call them. So when we did our song, I wanted to incorporate that. So we do on the child, starting right here. Right? Here's the chord I missed before when we did it live. There we go. All right. So a lot of the same chords here. I just kind of, recycle it. And I don't think I would even say that, some of this sounds like her song, but I definitely was inspired by it. Yeah. So that middle section, I wanted to use those stacked chords, so I did. But it's a signature of her sound. Another song she does that with on the Tapestry album is "So Far Away." Listen to this. And just to give you an idea, so we have this. Hear that? That's a luscious sounding chord. If you, I have what's called perfect pitch. It's not perfect, but I hate the term. But when I hear that, it's just full of a rainbow of colors.
To me, it's a chord with a little bit of tension. A chord you got to kind of lean into. I mean, your body language. Every time you play one of those stacked chords, your shoulders come up.
It's a difference between eating just a sandwich with mayonnaise or a sandwich with Dijon. That's the difference. It's just a luscious chord, right? So the first one is an A chord over a D bass. The second one, we call it G major 7, or I like to think of it as a B minor over a G bass. But
that doesn't mean a whole lot to me.
So if I didn't do that, I could just have.
Ooh, that's.
Or let's say an A chord. It just doesn't. It's
not even the song anymore.
No. Yeah, they'd have to change the right hand to left hand to match so they'd match each other. But and then when you start the song, so far away, you want to sing it? Doesn't anybody stay in one place anymore? Hear that? And hear the next one? And then right here. Hear that? There's a F sharp over a D bass. So the song is just chock full. Even this part. They're all full of those stacked chords. Or major seventh chords if you want to, and minor seventh chords if you want to say it that way. So just another signature of her playing style.
Gosh, and you add that with her voice that has so much personality too. Just the way her voice sounds. Yeah. Which in her memoir, she started smoking cigarettes at 14.
Okay.
She quit, but 17 years later or something. Yeah. That. Anyway, so I don't know if she just naturally has that raspy voice or if that was part of the smoking so young or whatever.
So here's a good place to live. If I didn't put those stacked chords, doesn't help to know that. It's hard to do it. now with the stacked chords.
Through your shoulders, you just...
Yeah, it just has a different sound to it. It's not so plain. Which there's a time for that. In fact, there's songs she's written, not many, that just have the 3 notes per chord, like, what's that, Aretha Franklin song?
Natural Woman.
Yeah, it also has stacked chords too, but a great deal of it just has the 3-note triad chords. But this song is just full of them, So Far Away. So another one. Home Again. Listen to this intro. Let's see, yes. Now, there's just 2 chords there. And I chose this one as an example because first you just have the triad. Then you have this, a G chord over an A bass. So you have just the straight triad and then that lusciousness there. So she doesn't go. She goes.
Yeah, it's just something you got to kind of lean into it. A little anticipation there.
Yeah, but that's very Carole King to have those stacked chords everywhere, those major 7th chords, minor 7th chords, and even fully diminished 7th chords. But she's not limited on her like chord knowledge or anything like some artists are. She can play.
She was very, very gifted in music theory, which I'd asked you this because I know she was very gifted in music theory, and we get asked this question a ton. Do I have to be good at music theory to compose? Do those things go hand in hand? Are they necessary?
I think studying music theory helps you understand what's going on and to analyze things when you look at what someone else has written. I don't think they help you in the creative process. I think, because a lot of people play wonderfully, don't know any theory, don't know, what a 4 chord is from a 1 chord or anything, but they can write music. I think in that creative process, at least for me, I don't use theory knowledge, head knowledge to do that. That comes from the heart. That comes from the ear and feeling and all those types of things. But I think understanding theory helps you to analyze it later and understand it. But I've never sat down with my theoretical knowledge, of music and been able to write a great song or great melody. It's like they're, they kind of help one another.
Yeah.
But when you're actually creating something, I don't think it helps that much.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess otherwise, if you had this formula and then you just tried to fit chords that worked into the formula.
It's like this. If someone's a great poet, does that mean they're good at English, at grammar, analyzing grammar?
That's true.
So the study of grammar helps you understand what someone did in poetry. But if you're going to write something that's poetry, I don't think that knowledge necessarily helps you, do that.
And with her earliest life experiences being around music, it probably was like she had all of this information, these feelings about these chords, and then when she got to those theory classes in performing arts school, she finally had like, oh, that's what I can call all these things.
Right.
But she already knew
I don't want to discourage anyone from studying theory because it does help. It helps you to understand what's going on. But but it's not going to all of a sudden make you a composer. All right, so stacked chords, and we use those in our song, of course, to do that. The most, I think, coolest stacked chord she does is the 4/5. Like I mentioned that before, it leads back into the 1 chord. That's just having the 5 in the bass and the 4 chord on top. Those of you who know, music theory at all. The next thing, blues.
Yeah. I want to say a funny thing about the 4/5 chord.
Okay.
So she was backstage with Brian Wilson at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction.
Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys.
Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. Yeah. He was getting inducted. She was introducing somebody, and a journalist or somebody was talking to them both, and they were like, all right, who really invented the 4/5 chord? Was it Carole King or was it Brian Wilson? Because they're both really known for... that's a character quality of their music, I guess.
Yeah.
And they both were kind of like, what a silly question.
Yeah.
And then Brian Wilson blew it off as like, I don't know, the fans know everything about our lives anyways. Let them decide.
Yeah. Well, so if I want to answer that, I would say they have to get in line behind Bach. And
I think they know that.
Yeah, right. But as far as popularizing it in, I guess, pop rock music, maybe they were the pioneers in that. I don't know. Elton John used it all the time. And
they were inspired by the people before them.
There's always that inspiration from someone else that you get. No one's completely original, especially in music. There's only 12 notes. There's only 12 tones. There's only 7 notes in the scale, and there's nothing truly original. So going to the next thing, blues. And if I have to, we're always coming back to blues as far as influencing music. no matter what kind of music you're talking about.
She was writing for rhythm and blues artists.
If you're doing, because they're, blues, strict blues, 12-bar blues has only 3 chords, has a certain chord progression, and you have blues notes. But that style of music influenced and influences today everything. I mean, it's amazing. Country music, popular music, anything you can name, blues has influenced it. But she plays a lot of blues stuff when she's playing the piano, when she's singing. In fact, in this song, Feel the Earth Move, still on that one, she does, I think later on at the end of the song, right? Which is just the same notes that she does at the beginning. It's an octave higher. Kind of like the Doors, minor blues. The organist for the the Doors. So we have blues in there. We also have blues in Smackwater Jack. Is that the right way to say that? It goes faster. Now on that one, she's not playing the piano so much. She's got a bass guitar playing. She's got some person playing the keyboard blues kind of thing. So she kind of stays in the background there, which that's something you have to learn how to do when you play with a band. When you're a pianist, she plays a lot.
She talked about, so she, at this point when she recorded this album, she had moved from East Coast, got a divorce, moved to Laurel Canyon, which was somehow ended up being the like creatives area. There's even like documentaries about Laurel Canyon. So she's living in Laurel Canyon, and she starts kind of like jamming with the neighbors coming over. They find out Carole can play piano, and they invite her over, and she's having this experience of playing with other musicians, just for fun. And she was like, "Whoa, this is so fun!" Because she had only ever written by herself, and then gone into the studio and directed other musicians. So she kind of had this album was like coming off of that amazing experience of sharing music with other musicians in real time together and having to listen. She talked about having to know when to play a fill. When to back off, when to come forward, when to just all those conversations between all the instruments was kind of a new thing for her.
Sure. And you have, if you're, a pianist and you go into a band, the first thing you learn is you can't play so much left hand. Because you step all over the drummer and the bassist's toes if you play the left hand like you would if you're playing by yourself. You also can't, there's certain registers you don't want to play. And if the guitar's, doing fills up in this area, you don't want to play in that area. You want to stay in the middle. So, you learn that by listening. And eventually it becomes instinct, but you really have to listen at first, and it just sounds muddy. And you think, everybody's messing up, until you realize, well, I'm playing too much. So you have to back off. But and so that's what happened. Smackwater Jack is an example of that, where she's not going to play as much on the piano, but it's an example of blues influence. It's straight blues, and so that one, along with, and I wanted to use that in our song too. And we have some gospel blues, which gospel is very closely related to blues, I think. But right here, it's very gospel blues. And then I even use later on, so a little blues. Even when we went, all right, is kind of the way she uses thirds here in the Feel the Earth Move. So I intentionally wanted to use something like that. So blues sounding in our song, even though it's not straight blues by any means, it has blues elements, which is what she did. She had blues elements in her piano playing and also in her vocals.
Yeah. So you said something interesting, and we're going to take a little break here, but I want to tease this next thing. So you said if you're a piano player and you're playing with other instruments, you really have to learn how to back off. Yeah. And a lot of times it comes with taking the left hand out. But we'll talk about something Carole does really interestingly with her left hand when we get back.
Oh, okay. I don't know what it is. So
yes, you told me about it. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I told you, but I didn't know that she did anything. Okay.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Okay,
right.
We'll get to it in just a second.
Okay.
Okay, so we left off talking about as a musician, playing with other musicians, you got to learn what to leave off when you're playing piano. Yeah. And you said a lot of times it's what you're doing in the left hand.
Right.
But you said Carole kind of has a signature thing that she does, and she often does it with her left hand.
Yeah. And it's kind of unique because most piano players, even people who are really good at piano, will not do a lot with the left hand. They'll stick with the octave and the fifth, and any lick or all that they do, they'll do in the right hand. But she has a lot of left hand things that she'll do that she'll put in there. But I'd like to get into it first by just talking about the pentatonic licks first that she does. Now, a pentatonic scale is a 5-note scale. A lot of people realize that the black keys on the piano make a pentatonic scale. Like they always used to play that on a astronomy show they would have at night, and they would do the pentatonic scale. But that's not the only one. It's not just the black keys on the piano, but that's the sound of it. A lot of players will do that because it fits the guitar well. It's very close to the blues scale, but it's not quite a blues thing. But let me show you what I mean. We'll do the song So Far Away. I just did it. You hear that?
Yeah.
That? So she'll play chords, then she'll have these little bitty 2 or 3, 4 notes sometimes that just are little pentatonic licks that really add to the song. So that's one. Another one is
one of those things that, like, when you're singing along to the song, you also sing the little fill.
Yeah.
Da da da.
Yeah, and they're little bitty things, but they're like the cherry on top, you know. So here's another one. Notice how that's a lot like the other song. Same rhythm, yeah. So far, I never realized that until I was. Here it is. You hear that?
Yeah.
In fact, it's almost the same thing. The other one went doo doo doo, and this one went. But da 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 da. That's a little It's pentatonic. So she'll have chords, and then she'll have these little pentatonic licks that will kind of be the cherry on top for me. So that's another one. It's Too Late. Let's see. Da-da-da-da-da-da. That's my favorite one.
Yes.
Another. So we're talking about things that are characteristic of Carole King, and that's something she does, I've noticed a lot, at least on Tapestry. Another little pentatonic thing in the right hand that just really add to the song that you don't really realize it's there, but if you took it out, you'd miss it. Right? Because if you just go, you're like, where's the da-da-da-da-da-da? You know? So that's important.
Or that she does it and not the bassist or the guitarist.
Yeah. Now here's one that, let me find it. Oh, it's in the back here. You should see my notes. They're awful. Okay. You Make Me Feel. Aretha Franklin did that, right? Or it was written.
Yeah,
Carole King wrote it.
Yeah, she and Jerry Goffin were approached to write that song for Aretha Franklin.
Oh, I thought they wrote it and then Aretha picked it up. Okay.
No, they said, so they had Jerry Wexler in common. And Jerry Wexler, a little crossover information, produced the Troublemaker album with Willie Nelson. He kind of did a couple of albums with Willie Nelson.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, he was working with Aretha Franklin. He was like, hey, guys, I want to do a song. We need a song for Aretha. I want it to be something like where you use Natural Woman.
Okay.
So they took that. Also blew my mind. A man wrote these lyrics.
All right. All right. So this is one where she doesn't always have to use those luscious chords. Sometimes it's just. Is that right? Right.
Oh, it makes me feel so uninspired.
Okay, so that's not the part I'm talking about, but that's the song. And now,
We all know the song.
Yeah.
I mean,
So just so you got the song in your mind now. So that's what I was trying to do. Here's the chorus of it, or bridge, whatever you want to call it. There it is. Okay, so oh, sorry. 1, 2, 3. Hear that? But it's a left-hand lick.
that's cool.
You can use your right hand a little bit with it, but it's down in that register, which is not a usual thing, but it sounds great. She does it again right here. Hold on. So, bum, bum. Here's the second one. That's pentatonic. Pentatonic scale. So here's the first one. Here's the second one. Messed it up. Hear that? Dun, da, da, da. And that's a left hand pentatonic. So not only is she doing pentatonic licks, but she will include the left hand in these sometimes. And that's not something all pianists do. You may say, well, why not? Because it's hard.
Yeah.
Because the left hand doesn't normally play scale stuff or, this pentatonic stuff. Usually that's a right hand thing. So, but she would do it in the left hand as well. She wasn't afraid to do that. Plus, it's also harder to manage because you have to manage the pedal. You can't use as much. You got to be real careful with the pedal when you're trying to play a lick low. You can really blur it, you know. There I did it. Okay. Dun, da, da, da. So pentatonic licks is something you will find when you listen to this album. What I love is I hope when you guys go back and listen to this album, you will hear all these things we're talking about. And it will just open up music for you in a way that wasn't before. Even if you're not a player, even if you're just someone who loves music and loves to listen, we can actually train our ears to listen for these things, even though we may not play an instrument.
Would you want to follow up Aretha Franklin's version?
I would not, no, but she did that, didn't she?
Yeah, she, in her book, at the end of the chapter where she kind of talks about this whole song, and she wrote, question, how do you follow Aretha Franklin? Answer, you don't. You only precede her. So it was interesting. I went back and I really got this version in my head, Carole King's, but I went back and listened to the Aretha Franklin version, and it was a little faster. So Carole slowed it down. And she said in the process of coming up with what she wanted to do, of course, she didn't do all the instrumental arrangements for Natural Woman. Mm-hmm. She and Jerry wrote the shell of the song, and then they passed it off to the label, Aretha's people, what they were all that they were doing. And they never heard the finished product till it was on the radio. Oh, wow. Yeah. And so they were just, of course, blown away. Yeah. So to revisit this song for this album, again, she was like, you just have to precede her. You can't try to recreate it. Uh-huh. You have to do something different. So she slowed the tempo down, but she said she kept some of the chords that the other composer used. Mm-hmm. She kept some of those because they were so cool sounding. Anyway, it just came up with a great version, I think, that fit Carole King outside of, and not taking away from what Aretha Franklin did. Right, and that's what you have to do. You have to make it your own and be yourself. If you sound at all like you're trying to be someone else who is a great, epic singer, like some of these people try to, do Whitney Houston songs that are on these voice contest shows. I think maybe you can do that, but you can't, try to be Whitney. Carole said, she has a quote in her book where she knew she wasn't vocally on the same league as Aretha Franklin, Joni Mitchell, or Barbra Streisand, but she knew how to convey the mood and the emotion of a song with an honest and straight from the heart interpretation. And that's so perfect description of how she. Yeah, I actually like her version better. I think they're different. That's what I think I can look at them in two separate categories. They are different, but hers is my favorite. All right, so moving on from pentatonic licks and using the left hand that she does. A lot of use of left hand. So
we'll hear sometimes simple chord patterns when she's playing, which is a normal thing. When you're singing, you don't want to do something too complicated with the rhythm. But she always has really neat chord progressions. And, they're kind of unique to her. And I just really think that's cool. She always does something that you don't expect and surprises you. That Elton John was that way. And one of this, let's look at Beautiful. 2, 3, 4. We said this run is of a Beatles song, right?
Yeah.
And there's the tuba. And then I love this chord. Fully diminished 7th chord. 4/5, which is a signature Carole King move there. But I love this, the simple dun, 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 dun. So it's a song off of Sgt. Pepper's that's making us think of
probably.
This.
I've been meaning to, every time I hear, especially the end of this song, and the way the little keyboard sound or whatever they're using too.
Right, makes me think of a circus or something.
Yeah, but I keep thinking that sounds like a Beatles song. And I don't think she's like stealing, ripping anything. It's just
it's the instrumentation, the texture of it. And you have this, like I said, tuba. So very simple, just straight quarter notes. And again, short notes there. But very interesting chord progression. I mean, she's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 or 9 chords, just looking at what I've played right here. And, that's a far cry from songs that are written with 3 chords.
Yeah.
And I love that fully the augmented 6th chord. Very cool. So complex chord progressions. I love hearing something that's interesting that way. But that song is that way. You've Got a Friend. Yeah.
Back to Beautiful. One. That's our 7-year-old daughter's favorite song on this album. She knows every word. And she said, Mom, I like that she just starts singing.
Yeah.
There's no intro. And I'm like, okay, my 7-year-old can recognize the confidence it takes to just have to go, you got to get up every morning. Just to start a song, no intro, no lead in.
Yeah, yeah. All right, and then I love You've Got a Friend, which I can't do this one without thinking of James Taylor, So just very simple rhythm. I love this one because you hear the bass line. For some reason, I hear the bass line moving up and down. It's not just something on the bass that makes the chord. I hear it as a melody line. Hear it? Here's our stacked chords. Here's our 4/5. And then a very neat feel. But to have, it's an F minor. Who writes an F minor? Unless they're a guitar player playing with a capo on or something. But F minor has 4 flats, and people usually don't want to touch it. But just playing an F minor, and then I love this G minor 7 to C7 to F. That's kind of Beatlish too. And the Beatles they don't read music, they don't have music theory, but yet they could write these. In fact, they're a great study for music theory, seeing how chords, what can be done with chord progressions. Which you did actually
on the website.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I have a course on there. By the way, I have a website called webpianoteacher.com, and I teach people how to play piano, a piano teacher, but not with notes. If you have ever had trouble reading music notes, that's been a roadblock for you. I teach a totally different way. I use a system of letters and talking about chords and demonstration, you watching what I'm doing, and it's worked for millions of people. And it's just a way to learn piano to bypass having to read traditional music notation. Anyway.
And it's a lot of arrangements of exactly what you hear on the album.
Right. because if you get sheet music, a lot of times they have melody in the right hand. They have this formula, the way they'll do the left hand, and you're like, oh, this doesn't sound like. Spend all this time learning it, then it doesn't really sound like, what Carole King is playing. But I specialize in trying to give you what they're playing, the artist is playing. So that's a big part of it too. Anyway, so
how many Carole King songs can you learn on the website?
There's maybe 5, 6, 7 now. I think there was 5 before I started this, and I did 2 more. So I think there's 7. They're all from Tapestry. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all on there. So complex.
You want to hear a little sweet story about You've Got a Friend in Me? Okay. So she and James Taylor, I almost called him Sweet Baby James. James Taylor had a relationship, not like romantic, at least not that I read in her memoir.
Okay.
They were good friends, and she actually was in his band before she had a solo album. Well, before she was really popular, before Tapestry. She was touring with him, and he knew her talent, and he knew what she could do, and had a lot more confidence in her than she had in herself. And he'd called her up on stage. He just really took care of her in the moment and set her up for the audience to love her. Anyway, but he has that song, I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend, but I always thought, I'm butchering it, but I'd see you again. Yeah. So You've Got a Friend in Me was her direct response to I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. And her direct response is, You've Got a Friend in Me.
Okay.
Isn't that sweet?
It is. It's great. They should have a movie.
Well,
I'd go watch it.
And when she was writing for this album, she hadn't really written for herself before. She'd always had her ex-husband, Jerry, writing for her.
Okay.
So she didn't have to exercise that. She always said she wasn't a lyricist, but she started messing around. She was greatly, greatly inspired by James Taylor, that his songs sounded very simple. They were very approachable, very listenable.
Yeah.
But they were really complex. Mm-hmm. And so she took that for inspiration for this album. That's why the song lends itself so well to James Taylor.
Wow. Yeah, it does. Yeah. So I wanted to get to at least one last concept here that characterizes Carole King, and that's the contrast between staccato and legato.
This is maybe one of my favorites.
Yeah. So a little Italian here. Staccato, legato, Mario, spaghetti.
Stop. That's what our son would say.
So,
stop.
Yeah, staccato just means space between the notes, short notes. Legato is smooth. Okay, so you'll hear the difference. Well, Carole King was great at kind of using both, combining those. So she would have a song, and the main keyboard riff wouldn't necessarily be all smooth or all staccato, but she would combine them. Like, take a listen to this. And then once you start the verse, it's smooth. And then later on, she goes, it would be so fine to see your...
And without that, the song is just so different.
Yeah, so if I don't play staccato there, it's not the same. Or if I go, instead of the daylight in between the notes there. So she combined staccato and legato, just little bitty things that you don't realize that really give you the flavor of the song. And another thing is you wouldn't be able to hear those things unless the texture of the music was so simple. If you had a lot of band members playing, a lot of stuff going on, you're not going to hear that staccato. It's just going to get covered up and muddled up, which I think a lot of music today, don't get me started, but a lot of it is just noise. It's just a wall of sound. More is not always better. In fact, anyway, so you can hear those things because it's so intimate sounding of just her piano playing. We have that contrast between staccato and legato. So that's So Far Away. And then the next one I have is Home Again, which we've already used a couple of times, but those songs are, I never realized they were so similar. Yeah.
That's the marker of a genius musician.
Yeah. And so both of those songs have stacked chords. Both of those songs have a staccato in the same place. Both those songs have the same rhythm, and they both have a pentatonic lick after. Or, anyway, genius. Okay, so
it's genius because it doesn't get old.
Yeah.
Like we didn't notice.
And it just shows you how music is just recycled. It's like, I think, what do they say? There's only so many DNA fragments, whatever, and everyone has the same amount. They're just recycled or in a different way. Same thing with music. There's just a few little notes, and they're just recycled in different ways. So there's another example. There's one more, maybe my favorite here. Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? Let's see. Sorry, I screwed it up. Here we go. There's our 4/5. You learning to hear that? It just makes you do that. You hear it? But you hear the staccato note? If I didn't do the staccato, it would sound like this. And not a little lift. Also have a little bass thing.
Yeah.
Her left hand. That I don't even hear Elton John do that. Hardly ever. If I can't think of a time.
No.
He doesn't
well,
need
he's
to.
doing a whole lot with his right hand.
Yeah, right. But congrats on her using her left hand there. Left hand's always weak for piano players, weaker than the right.
Yeah.
So we have to. Yeah. So anyway, the staccato legato. It's not all legato. It's not all staccato. And then on the second one, and the 4/5. So really cool.
And I think, scientifically, the way your brain works is it's designed. Your brain hears the differences. Mm-hmm. So when things are the same, your brain can kind of go into this autopilot listening, because a lot of times we're not like focused listening to music, right? It's on and you're kind of enjoying it in the background. So your brain automatically, if it was the same, your brain would kind of shut off. But Carole keeps your brain like engaged with all these just little variations of what she's doing.
Right. And as a musician, if you're someone who plays, you'll take something from Carole King and it'll become a part of your playing. And it doesn't mean you're going to sound like Carole King, but you take a little bit here, a little bit there. There's a saying, here a little, there a little, and that's very true. You just take a little bit and you add it to your bag of tricks, and it makes you who you are. Yeah, and speaking of the background music, I've gotten where I hate having background music. I don't like elevator music. I like it to be silent until I'm going to listen to something. Then I want the music on. But as far as just having music on to have it on in the background, I've gotten where I hate that. We got time for the country third, or throw that in, or
Here's the thing, she does so much, guys, we can't get it all in.
I'll take 10 seconds and show you one example. Okay. All right, on So Far Away. One more song about along the highway. Here it is. There it is. If you know the country third, Elton John, Billy Joel, Floyd Kramer, she does it too. There are other examples, but that's good enough to do that one.
Yeah. So I wanted to circle back around to our song, and especially because Carole claims she wasn't ever a lyricist, which is just not true. I think once she put her mind to it. Yeah. And maybe she said she wasn't a lyricist. You know, when she got married to Jerry Goffin, she was like 17. And there's only so much a 17-year-old can write about from experience.
Okay.
So by the time she starts writing for this Tapestry album, she's lived a lot of life. She still was very young, but she had lived a lot of life by that point.
She'd already played a lot of music and written a lot of music.
Played a lot of music. I mean, I was writing in my notes of research, just writing like a timeline and keeping track of the years and her age. And she's moving out to California, divorced, 2 kids, already having had a full career of music. And she's like 20, in her early 20s, which, I mean, I can somewhat relate to. I had kids pretty early. But I think when it came to writing lyrics for this song, I really struggled because people's lives are complicated. And I think her life was complicated a little bit, and the emotions of her life and her story. So it was, I kind of struggled to write lyrics here for her. I went back and forth with you. I was pretty frustrated because I just wanted you to help me.
Yeah.
And you were like, just write the lyrics and give it to me. But that's where the chorus comes in, a child with child making trips around the sun. She was like 17 when she had her first daughter.
Yeah, that's my favorite line, by the way. I like that.
And then like 2 years later had her second daughter. And she had a lot of, the marriage with Jerry Goffin was not perfect. He had a lot of mental illness and drug abuse and all of those things. So here's this like 22-year-old having to make 21, 22-year-old make pretty hard decisions regarding her daughters and her husband and their career. And, you know, anyway, they were making trips around the sun, her and her children together, just growing, getting older, in her life, weaving notes around rhythms, chords broken, but not undone. So a little nod to that pretty difficult time in her life.
Yeah.
And she had that with several relationships, just broken people, trying to make a good relationship with broken people. But she always came back to music. So no matter how dark the night becomes, the music of the Ivories makes life sound all right. And then we get a na 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 na. We take this like serious chorus and
well, it's kind of her attitude. If you want, you could just watch a couple of minutes of a concert, and you can tell her attitude toward everything.
And it's so funny. She gets stopped all the time. She says by people where this album specifically was something that just was like a part of their life, like a marker for some big event in their life. The funniest one, I think, is It's Too Late. People are always like, I got divorced to that song. Which, I mean, I do think that's the sentiment of the song. I love that she didn't say it so like sad. It's too late. She just is like singing the song as stating a matter of fact. Like, it's too late.
Right. It's like we tell our kids, you can't always change your circumstances, but you can control your attitude about it.
But she never gets, she's not one of those artists that's like, ugh, I wish people would stop coming up to me.
Yeah.
She loves it. She knows how important these songs ended up being to people. Yeah. And I mean, we had a conversation recently, and I was having a conversation with this other woman who was sharing her story. And as this woman is sharing her story with this group of people, knowing she didn't want to share it, she was really struggling to share it, but knowing how helpful that story was going to be to all the people in the room. And I started jotting down. I mean, I was stuck on these lyrics. So I started writing down on the back of the piece of paper I had, you know, this idea of how important it is to share our stories. I mean, that's why we love this music, guys, is because these artists are sharing a story that we can relate to.
Right.
And so that's kind of where the second verse, and it's not necessarily her, it's all of us. We all have a story to sing.
Yeah, and at the end of the day.
Yeah. And so the song's about her, but then it's not so much about her. And then the bridge, that's my favorite part. She goes before, she can laugh, she can smile at the days to come, which, you know.
I love that. I wanted that to be kind of improv. Just to really go crazy with the piano rhythm. And then you did great with doing the vocals a different way.
Tough, but, but yeah, if you know the Proverbs 31 woman, she can laugh at the days to come. I just think that's such a good attitude to have all the time. Yeah. So she can laugh, she can smile at the days to come. And then through all of this, I can hear a melody for the future to hum.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think there's 7 songs from Tapestry that I teach completely on the website. So
yeah.
And you know, they're all the favorite ones everybody loves to listen to and sing.
But you're going to learn a Carole King song, and you're going to learn a lot of just technique that you could incorporate.
Yeah, yeah. Everything, it isn't like you work real hard on a song, and then you start another song, and you have to start all over. It's not like that. Everything you learn stays with you, everything you really learn. And the next thing you do is going to be a little easier because it's going to have the same things somewhere else that you learned. So the more you do, keep music going, and learn more and more things, it's going to increase your talent or your ability as a musician, not just on that one song. So,
all right, guys. Well, thanks for listening to episode 3 of Web Piano Teacher Artist Series.
Perfect timing.